Good evening, everyone, and welcome along to another Toon Under Podcast, the original and best Newcastle United podcast in the Southern Hemisphere. And joining me tonight is Keegan from down in Geelong. Been a bit of a long day for you, Keegan, but I want you to kind of big us up because we've got some good news coming from Chartable today.
We have the ratings are in, and we are the number one ranked Newcastle United independent Newcastle United podcast in all of Australia. So that's great. Thank you for everyone for listening. To anyone else who's still listening in other countries, make sure you start listening so we can get top 30 in your country as well. And soon enough, worldwide domination will be achieved, and we'll all be happy.
Yeah, top 30 is pretty impressive. I mean, when we started doing this, it was literally just about we missed that football banter and we were all excited and we needed somebody in our own time zone to have a chat to about the games and commiserate or celebrate. And it's just kind of like snowballed from there. So to kind of get the numbers that we're getting at the moment, I'm actually really impressed, and it's a little bit humbling. So yeah, as you said, thank you very much to everyone who's been listening on all of the audio platforms, and obviously we've been getting some really good numbers on YouTube at the moment as well. So again, thanks very much, and everyone who is watching along on YouTube, that's great. And if you're not, then get on there and give us a like and a subscribe. It really does help us out. So I just before we get on to the intent of this podcast, which is the Aston Villa preview, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the couple of meetups that are going on this weekend for this game. So Brisbane, we've got about 25 to 30 people already signed up for it at the Pig and Whistle Riverside in the city. I know that Melbourne are doing a meetup in the Sherlock in the city centre, as per usual for them. I'm not 100% sure. I'm guessing it's Cheers Bar in Sydney that'll be doing it as well. The usual meetup where Lee cracked his hand off the ceiling. So look, the Melbourne one's going to be exciting. We've got three of us from the podcast going along. So myself, Lee, and Jack will be there. We'll be hopefully, if I can get my technology in order, we'll try and get some post-match footage of some of the fans that are there as well, and get that out for everyone to see from the madness that is our Newcastle meetups in Australia. So we've not had a lot of really good results in early kickoffs, it has to be said. Saturday early kickoffs for us, I can't even remember the last time we scored a goal in one of them, let alone actually won one. So I'm hoping that this will change that, and we'll actually get to celebrate some goals and a win. Not that it stops us having a few bevies anyway and singing some songs. So yeah, let's see how we go. So look, onto the match itself. I just want to go through the stats for last season's. I don't have a slide for this for those watching on YouTube, but I've got them up here. So a head-to-head record against Villa in the Premier League. So Aston Villa have 11 wins, Newcastle 24 wins and 16 draws. Current form, the last 5 games, Newcastle have won their last 5, so 5 in a row for us. Villa have won 4 and drawn 1. So I think it's 2 informed teams that are coming to play this weekend. It sort of has the hallmarks of a pretty interesting game. A lot on the line in terms of where both clubs are trying to aim at, and so. Look, I mean, we've kind of touched on in our group chat, Keegan. We've had a chat about Villa's form of recent, and I think they're kind of their last 8 games or so have been pretty impressive in terms of their results. I don't watch a lot of their games, I have to say, so it's not. I don't know exactly how they're playing, but it's hard to argue that Emery has actually seen a bit of an upturn in form. They've had a couple of squeaky results, but the teams they've been playing have not exactly been the top caliber either. So where do you see the form leading up to this game?
Yeah, I'm the same as you, mate. I don't really follow what Aston Villa have done or doing, or like for all I know Dion Dublin's still up front for them. Like I don't care what Aston Villa are doing pretty much at the moment. Well, even like last year, all I was concerned about was who was around us and making sure we got out of the bottom 3. This year, it's a complete opposite. I'm sort of had my eye around maybe 5 or 6 teams. Now, that's probably drifted back to 3, it's probably only us, Man United and Liverpool, who I'm basically following their results for the rest of the year now, because I think for what we want to do and where we want to go, they're the only teams that matter. I don't think
Spurs,
sort of, Brighton, Brentford, Liverpool, Chelsea, I don't think they can. I think they're going to run out of time if they're going to make a run to get in that top 4. So, probably, Spurs and Man United are probably the only teams whose results I've been paying attention to at the moment. I couldn't tell you who was in the bottom 3. I know Man City and Arsenal obviously ahead of us. So, I don't really care about the other teams. I've got too much shit on to worry about 20 teams in the Premier League.
Yeah, it's tough enough getting up in the morning to watch Newcastle games without having to worry about watching any other games. So,
it was
totally
easier
with you on that one.
It was easier with the red button on Foxtel because you could just sort of hop in and out of games. But I know that you might have to push 4 or 5 buttons now for Optus, and I'm a lazy prick, and that's a pain in the ass to do. So I don't really, and because they all kick off at the same time. Like sometimes you used to get maybe a 10 or 15 minute sort of window. So like if we went to half time, you'd quickly flick over and watch the last 10 minutes of the half of another game. But now they're pretty like everything starts on time. So you don't really, if it's half time of your game, it's pretty much going to be half time on every other game as well. So I don't really bother about it, to be honest.
No, that's fair. So the previous game this season, obviously there's a lot gone on in Aston Villa's territory this season, and we'll come to that in a minute because it is the elephant in the room that we need to discuss. But look, we dished out a pretty convincing 4-0 hiding at St James's Park earlier in the season. Wilson grabbed 2 goals, 1 penalty was in there as well. Joe Linton scored 1. And I don't know if you remember, but Miggy scored an absolute top draw screamer to seal it off as 4-0, just cut inside, banged it in the top bin. So, look, if we can do something like that again down there, then I'll be more than happy, but I can't see it being quite that easy this time. What were your thoughts of that previous game? Because, look, these are the stats that I've kind of pulled out, at least the main ones for us. We had 20 shots to their 3. We had 7 shots on target. They did not manage a shot on target for the entire game. At St James's Park.
That was Emery had just taken over then, hadn't he? But he wasn't actually.
Don't know if he had taken over yet. I think maybe he was in the stands, kind of thing.
Yeah. I think he'd been appointed, but wasn't actually in charge yet. Sort of like what Eddie had with Brighton. That sort of arrangement. So we did probably get them at their lowest sort of point of the season when you look at it from that point of view. But I think. I'm probably wrong because I'm constantly wrong, but I think from memory, the game was a bit of an arm wrestle early. And
First half was very tight, but
then we sort of just
dominated
went nuts. Went nuts in the second half. And with teams like that in the situation they're in, and even we've seen it with West Ham and things like that because they were lower on the table. So I think they might be in the top 10 now, if I'm not mistaken.
They're pushing. They're definitely pushing for Europe. I think they're in like either 6th or 7th at the moment. If my
there you go.
So they are like they're definitely been on a good run of form. They've definitely pushed their way up the table and sort of righted some wrongs from the Gerrard days. But as we mentioned, it's like they've been playing the likes of Leicester, where they needed a man sent off for Leicester to be able to get that narrow victory. They've played Palace, they've played Everton, they've played a pretty piss poor Chelsea side. They've played like all the bottom sides that are in and around kind of like relegation zone. The only team that they've played in recent memory in the kind of like the top part of the table was actually Arsenal, and they lost that game. So it is definitely they're seemingly a little bit more defensively organized now. I think one of the big things that people were saying when Emery joined is he's kind of like that Rafa Benitez type, where he's going to get them well drilled, he's going to get them organized. It's going to be interesting to see how defensive they are against us on Saturday. But look, he's definitely got them playing in the right direction, at least going in the right direction. But I think this is kind of like their first test in a while, so it should prove to be a pretty good game, I think, all around. So I guess this is probably a good time to mention that elephant that Unai Emery. Obviously, we were heavily linked with him when the takeover first happened for one reason or another, and there's been some conflicting reports. I think it's, we've heard that we offered him the job and he turned us down. We've heard that he was one of the main candidates, and some of the board wanted him. Some of the board had been sold on Eddie Howe already. But whatever happened, we got our man in charge at the moment, and I don't think we've looked back ever since. We're all absolutely ecstatic at the job that Eddie has done. But two questions for this I've got for you. If Emery did take over, do you reckon that he would have actually kept us up? And given that he did struggle in Arsenal, but has won cups in other places, do you see this as a really good appointment for Aston Villa, kind of medium to long term for them?
I'll start with the second one first. I think it is a good appointment because anyone was going to be better than Steven Gerrard. Or not, most people were going to be better than Steven Gerrard. Like, let's be honest, he walked into a Rangers job with no real opposition because, like Celtic, and that was it. But I think Celtic were going through their own troubles at that time as well. So it was, and then as soon as the legend of Ange Postecoglou took over Celtic, Gerrard went to water and went back to being in second place, and they actually lost the league by a fair bit, considering it's only really a 2-horse race in that league. So, yeah, it was a surprise he actually got the Villa job. I think he got the job on name more than reputation. But yeah, I think even with when it comes to us, I think remember that I reckon he probably nearly had the job, and then if you remember that, whether someone from the ownership group had sort of leaked it to the media the night that they were playing that European game, and I think he sort of got cold feet and turned it down after like everything was agreed, and then he turned it down. But luckily for us, we got Eddie Howe, and we all know how brilliant he's been for us since he took over, and the amount of content that we've got out of him just through this podcast and Mad Dog Tyndall as well has been absolutely top notch. I'm not sure if we would have got the same sort of stuff out of Unai, I think, but he seems like a very similar manager with seems very in control of what he wants to do, and doesn't seem like a dick. But then Thomas Frank didn't seem like a dick either till after the game, and then he showed his true colours. So
yeah. Or there's a fair few managers in the league. They're doing okay when everything's going for them, but if anything doesn't go their way, the sour grapes come out, and they just don't paint themselves in a very good light. I think Frank was well out of order, I guess we would say, in his comments.
Yeah, just take your L, mate, and move on. Like, you got beaten. Like, you could have won, you didn't. Like, you had a penalty save, you got a penalty you shouldn't have had as well. Like, I think also, but I think one thing we can take out of that press conference actually is, anytime we sort of mention the big dog, Alexander Isak himself, I think we need to refer to him as the £63 million Alexander Isak. So that could be.
I assume that from now on, every player will be kind of prefaced by
the value.
Every
100%. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to the
86 million pound Nunez when he plays Liverpool.
So when we get to our lineups, we might have the 10 million pound Nick Pope in goal and things like that. We've got the who was the 12 million right back Kieran Trippier, the 3 million pound centre back Fabian Schär. We'll get to that later on. I don't want to spoil our lineups already, but you
some
get
very
the
salty managers out there, and I'm absolutely loving it.
Yeah.
Look, for me, I think Emery is a really good manager. I don't think that he was particularly the best manager for us at the time. I think he probably would have struggled to turn us around the way Eddie Howe did. I think Eddie Howe came in. I think it helped him with his previous relationships with players like Fraser, like Richie especially. Richie's clearly a huge influence in that dressing room. So having that immediate link with Howe there, I think has probably been one of the factors, and obviously getting Trippier in and the leadership that he brought in, and Bruno as well.
Wilson as well.
So we had like a core, and I think Eddie Howe really tapped into that, and how much Emery would have been able to do the same, or at least on the same level. is anyone's guess. We'll never know. The history books have been written. Good luck to Aston Villa with their manager. They seem to be really pleased with him. They like every other fan base is getting carried away with what the future holds, and they're talking about Europe, and they're talking about pushing on next season and trying to push for Champions League spots, which I think they probably could, given that they've spent a fair bit of money, and if Emery does turn out well, then who knows. But it's about the here and now. So let's have a quick check of the lineups that we think are going to happen for let's grab that and hide that one. Okay, I don't know how we get rid of the
Dion Dublin injured. Is he?
No.
Is he injured?
Yeah, he's having a bit of a break for this one. So for those who can't actually see, I'm going to get that up myself on another page. It's Martinez in goal. It is Moreno, Mings, Concert Ngoyo, and Ashley Young at left back, which is just baffling to me, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Ramsey, Louise, McGinn, Traore in midfield, and then a kind of like almost a two-pronged attack, but normally sort of Buendia's probably dropping a bit deeper, but Buendia and Watkins up front for them. The injuries that they've got are some pretty hefty casualties, I have to say. So I'm actually really thankful for these. So Matty Cash is out, Boubacar Kamara and Philippe Coutinho are out. Leon Bailey's apparently a late fitness test. He's kind of carrying a knock, but they're not sure if he's going to be fit enough to play. So this is kind of like the lineup that I've pulled from what most of the Villa fans are saying. So what's your thoughts on that, and where do you see some troublesome areas for us?
Yeah, well, obviously you can add Dion Dublin to that injury list as well if he's not in this match day 11, and probably I assume that Lee Hendry is on the bench playing the James Milner role for them as well. So, it is. It's an interesting lineup. Watkins is going really good. I know that because he's in my fantasy team and he scores really well for me. Jack, piss off and don't even think about getting him in just to stifle my charge to the title. Mings is an interesting one, isn't he? Because he seems like he's playing really well, but he's got the reputation of being a bit shit. So
he's almost got that kind of like massive cock up in him to sort of like drop a clanger and concede a goal.
A bramble. He's got the bramble.
Titus Bramble, yeah, exactly.
He's got the bramble bug.
Yeah.
So and then, well, is this the we're playing for the Matty Target Cup as well, so that'd be interesting to see if Matty. I don't think he will get on unless Big Dan Burn or one of our centre backs get injured. I don't think if the centre back get injured, I think if one of our centre backs got injured, they'll just bring Lascelles on to replace him. I don't think they'll. Yeah, I don't think they'd move Burn if they don't have to. Young. I think. Remember, I definitely remember. I think I'd done the preview for our home game against Aston Villa, and Ashley Young was a concern for, I can't remember what his name was, who we had on, the Villa guy, but he was concerned with Ashley Young, and I think he proved to be pretty right because I think we tore him a new one that game and his concerns were justified. So the fact that he's playing again, but I don't think we'll be playing with our two wingers who we did play with in that game. So he might have a bit of respite from the barrage he was copying at St. James's Park.
So it's interesting, like the players. So certainly two of the players that are missing out for Villa in terms of injury, Coutinho and Kamara, were players we were heavily linked with, and Aston Villa fans definitely seem to sort of think that it was a massive one-up on us that they managed to secure those players. Coutinho, I mean, even when he was on loan, he was playing under Gerrard, and it was Gerrard's best mate, and that's how they got him, by all accounts. He's got good pedigree at Liverpool, but never really set the world alight when he moved over to Barcelona.
No, he's not,
and it hasn't really set the world alight since he's came back to the Premier League either. Kamara was one of those players as well that I know. Bobby, one of the guys from the podcast, everyone knows Bobby,
resident scout
that he is. Yeah, he was big into Boubacar Kamara. Obviously, he was going on a free transfer as well. that kind of defensive midfielder that I think we're all crying out for. We didn't land him. I mean, whether or not we didn't go in for him, we didn't offer enough money, whether or not there was some other factors going on, who knows? But those are two big players that haven't really been as good as I think Villa would maybe have hoped. I don't know all the ins and outs of Kamara, to be honest, but Coutinho, I think I've been very disappointed with the bits that I have seen of him.
Yeah, I think he was sort of one of the world's best players when he was at Liverpool that first stint, wasn't he? And he obviously earned that big money move to Barcelona, but ever since then he just hasn't really fired a shot. And I think people are still hoping he's going to be that Coutinho from Liverpool, but there's enough evidence now to suggest that this is who he is. Like that's just who he is now. So you pay for what you get now, not for what you think he's going to be.
Well, to be honest, like some players, they play well because of who's around them. You know,
it
and
might
I think
be the system as well.
It could be the system. It could be like they just have this sort of telepathic link with one of the other star players in the team, and they link up really well, and they cause issues together. I mean, who was the Shevchenko, and who did Shevchenko play alongside
at Chelsea?
No, before he moved to Chelsea.
Was it Milan, wasn't he?
Yeah. I can't remember who it was, but
Ronaldinho?
They had they had this like amazing partnership up front, and I'm sure someone on Twitter or YouTube will remind us in the comments. So yeah, please let us know if you can remember. But again, it's like Shevchenko had this huge reputation coming into Chelsea and just never really sparked because he never had that foil that he was used to playing off in a different system. So yeah, interestingly that Ashley Young's being tipped as the left back by a lot of the Villa fans when there was such a big song and dance over the left back position when we acquired Matty Targett, and they got, what was the player from Dino, is it? From Everton?
Lucas Dingy.
Yeah.
Dinger.
Yep.
I don't know.
And he was meant to be the nuts when he moved there as well. And he hasn't really, well, obviously, if no one's really picking him, he's not injured by anything I can see. So he's obviously just out of favor. But, you know, again, Matty Targett is as well. So potentially Ashley Young's just been playing well and he's now done his spot. So interesting. Let's go over to the Newcastle team. So let's pull that one up. So obviously, I mean, we've kind of gone for an unsurprising lineup here as our guess for what we're going to go with. Nick Pope, Trippier, Shah, Botman, and Burn at the back. Pretty much solid these days. It picks itself. Eddie Howe's been on record saying that he's not fond of chopping and changing a back line, so don't see anything that's going to change there unless we get injuries. So, you know, touch wood that we don't get anything like that happening. And then we've got midfield of Longstaff, Bruno, and Willock, and then Murphy, Joe Linton playing out wide with Big Dog up front on his own.
The £63 million.
The £63 million.
Correct.
Yes. Sorry, I have to call him by his full name.
Yes, that's all right. So I'll chop you out, brother. It's all good.
It's going to be a bit of a stretch to fit that on the back of my shirt. So, what do you make of that side? Are there any sort of things that stand out? Obviously, the big thing that we'll have a bit of a chat on before we leave in terms of the midweek kerfuffle, shall we say, around Anthony Gordon and his substitute against Brentford. He's potentially, obviously, him on the right hand side for Murphy is something that and Wilson are fighting it out for that starting spot at the moment. What's your thoughts on that lineup, and do you see anything that might be slightly different there?
No, I think the only thing that could change, I don't think it will, but the only thing up for a discussion would be the £63 million Alexander Isak or Callum Wilson. I think that's the only sort of thing up for discussion. Gordon, although he has been pretty good when he come on, Eddie's obviously he's stated that he's very reluctant to change winning teams, and given we've had a sort of 4 week in between games now, we weren't jammed up. So I expect the way we started Brentford would be the way we start against Villa, and knowing that he does have them levers he can pull at half time if things aren't very good like they weren't against Brentford for that first half. You can bring Gordon on and bring Wilson on and sort of have him and Isak play together, which I don't think he likes doing. I think he'd prefer them sort of one or the other, but he does have that lever, and they seem to sort of work well together. I've noticed.
They changed the game when they were both on together against Brentford, didn't they?
Yeah, that first, I don't know, 20, 25 minutes, maybe after half time, and we were dog shit in that first half. Like, well, let's not beat around the bush. No. Brentford were comprehensively the better side for that half, and then the two substitutions just seemed to sort of reinvigorate and re-energize the team, and we really got a hold of the game, and sort of deservedly were 2-1 up by the end. We did sort of retreat a little bit after we got the lead, but it was good to see that Wilson can play. He was a real handful when he come on. I thought he was a real handful against West Ham. His confidence was up. I reckon that 2-week break through the international, he was carrying some niggles, we're led to believe, so that was a real good freshen up for him, and he looks to be back to his best, doesn't he? I mean, he did have a dry spell, and people were questioning his place post-World Cup, and rightfully so, because he wasn't performing very well, and whether he was carrying injuries, we're not privy to that information.
Well, he looked like he'd kind of lost a yard of pace, didn't he?
Yeah, he didn't look like Callum Wilson before the World Cup, did he?
No.
Like, and we could all see it, and I think Eddie was reluctant to change but having said that, we were all crying out because the team, we weren't winning games. Like, we weren't really losing, but our performances did dip, and, let's bring the 63 million pound man in and see what he can do. And our performances have been really good the last 5 games, and Wilson seems to be back fully fit. So to have that options together, it's really promising, and it's really good for us as a team that we can change games, and depending on the situation of the game, I think they can either play together or one or the other. Like, if we're down, like against Brentford, they play really well together. If we're up, I think bringing Isak off after the 60, 70 minute mark when he's done his tickets, have Wilson just to be that guy, that focal man to feed the ball.
No easing up the pressure.
Yeah, he can draw fouls, take the sting out of the game and stuff like that. It's really good to have them options.
Yeah, I mean, Murphy's pretty much nailed on to start for me at the moment. I think he's well and truly won that spot down in the absence of the bit of team news that we do have. Obviously, Emil Kraft's a long-term injury. He's not going to play this season, but Miggy is back training. He's been pictured in training, running around, kicking some balls. So hopefully he's not too far away. Having him back on the bench at the very least as a later option to bring on certainly adds to those options that we've been discussing. And then the other thing that's just came through before we came on is apparently St. Maximin's been ruled out for 3 or 4 weeks with another hamstring injury just as he was starting to pick up form. How much of a blow is that for the team, given he was starting to look really dangerous and back to his best? He looked like he was really fitting in with Eddie Howe's style of play. His fitness levels were obviously getting back up to where they needed to be. But how much of a blow is that for him, given the likelihood that we're going to spend big and look to strengthen in the summer?
Yeah, it's a blow for him, obviously, because like you said, he looked like he'd also turned the corner with his form over the last sort of few weeks. And it seems to be that cycle, doesn't it? He sort of is shit, has a couple of good games, gets injured, and then
rinse and repeat all over again.
yeah, it is actually rinse and repeat. So, but it's a blow for the team as well. One, we lose another depth player on the bench, where if he was starting, we had that option to bring on another good player to come off the bench. Now we're another good player short with that injury. And I know we've spoken sort of at length about him and his role in the squad and where he sort of sits going forward. And I've come out and said I don't think we should keep him anymore. His performances are too inconsistent for sort of what we have and where we want to go. But his performances have sort of swayed me back a little bit the last few weeks, but I've still landed on we can't just have 10 good games from Alan St. Maximin out of 38, whether he's injured for 15 of them and he's shit for the other ones. So, yeah, I'm still leaning on towards selling him. I
Well,
don't
he
think
comes with a bit of baggage as well, doesn't he? So I mean,
I
it's
don't think
like,
he's an Eddie Howe player.
yeah,
I think he's tried to change the way he plays to suit the way he wants to play, which
yeah, I've been
is
impressed with that, to be honest.
commendable. But physically, I don't think he could. Like, he's physically not an Eddie Howe player the way that
No.
he asks his team to play and his players to perform. I just don't think he is. So, I think it's time to cash in and get someone else a bit more reliable in that position.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of justify squad position for someone who you can't rely on, especially if we are in Europe next season, which, I mean, we're going to have a monumental like cock up to miss out on some form of Europe.
Mm.
But we're going to have games coming thick and fast. You need that squad rotation. You're going to need that backup of players. And if he's never fit because he just can't play that sort of tempo of game, and it's starting to look like his hamstrings just can't cope with the pace that we expect our players to play at, it's kind of, it may be time just to kind of move him on. On the other end of the spectrum, Longstaff pretty much is the first name on the team sheet these days for Eddie Howe. Hasn't missed a minute of any game for like God knows how long. Where does he get the energy from?
I think sort of with him is, we always talk about the unrewarded sort of running he does and how much ground he covers, but I reckon a lot of the stuff he does is a lot different to what everyone else does. So imagine that sort of your front 6 players there, they're really a high energy, high pressing, keep the speed in the game kind of players, and a lot of their stuff is at 100%, where Longstaff is that guy who just sort of cruises around at 70% and plugs all the gaps. You know what I mean? Like, you never see him like sprinting for the ball and charging up and down and shutting down. He sort of, when Bruno sort of pushes up and gets it a bit more advanced, Longstaff's the one who sort of tucks in behind and gives us that cover and protection as the midfielder. So he does cover a lot of ground, but the intensity and the speed he covers it at is a lot different to what the other 5 attacking players are. And I think that's why he's really effective in his role, because he's got the engine to do it, and he doesn't sort of go at 100% and just burn all his tickets. He's really smart and calculated with what he does, and that suits the role that Eddie is asking him to play. Yeah. So I think that's part of the reason his durability is really, really good.
Yeah, he's kind of like, he's I know what you mean. He's kind of like, he's working hard, but he's not busting a gut all the time to kind of, he's not doing it at pace. He's just doing it at this constant level, which is like, like a marathon, not a sprint type thing.
Yeah. So imagine like a Trippier, when Trippier overlaps, if Miggy was in the side, for example, and him and Miggy and Bruno had that little triangle going and stuff like that. So when Trippier bombs on, Longstaff's the one who sort of just comes out and covers that right-hand side while that attack plays out. And then obviously with the ball turns over, then they all sort of fold back into their shape and stuff like that. But yeah, he's always the one on that side that sort of covers everyone off. So, and he's great at it. And that's why we've all said he's a very sort of unheralded player, but he's a very important player in the side.
Yeah, indeed. So on to a couple of other points just before we try and wrap this one up relatively quickly this evening. So let's have a quick 2 cents worth on Aaron Gordon, Anthony Gordon, and his little bit of a spat when he came off against Brentford, which seems to have been turned from a molehill into a mountain on Twitter. Social media has been flaring up. Stan Collymore made his mouth go about it. Like, we all need to hear what he says about people misbehaving. So look, I mean, to me, it's a kid that is full of enthusiasm. He's just made a big money move. He's keen to impress. He's keen to prove himself. He was playing really well when he came on, and he was closing people down. His pace was causing problems. He won the ball back a couple of times. There was a few times in the last couple of games when he's been, and obviously, he's just back from injury as well. So he's obviously keen to get there, try and win a starting spot down. He's kind of gone overboard for me in terms of his reaction, but Eddie Howe came out and said, yeah, look, he needs to sort of like manage his emotions a little bit better. He's young, but I thought he had a bit of an ankle problem. He was holding his ankle, so I used that to try and run the clock down and bring him off. But he said he doesn't have a problem. What's your view on it? Because I mean, every man and his dog's had an opinion on this week, apparently. So I'll let you have your say.
All right, so let me start off by saying, whatever slightly controversial thing about Newcastle United will get the media in, like your talk sport sort of guys talking, because it gets a reaction, and Newcastle fans are passionate and we love our club, and we do get sucked into that clickbait shit because, like, Simon Jordan, Dan Collymore, what's that other dickhead that you were talking about off air?
Oh, I can't remember.
Lawrence?
Oh, yes, yeah, that's the Mark Lawrence, yeah. So
there's
him up as
I
well.
don't even know who that dickhead is, but they say shit because it gets a reaction out of Newcastle supporters, and their bosses are happy because it drives content drives revenue, and that's how the cycle works. So I don't really give a rat's toss bag about what the pundits think. How I view it is, he shouldn't have done it. I reckon 10 seconds after he sat down, he went, shit, I shouldn't have done that. It would have been a 5-minute, no, not even, a 10-second conversation. He goes up to Eddie. Sorry, mate, I was a bit of a dickhead then. Eddie, yeah, you were. Don't do it again. That's it. That's all it needs. That's all it is.
It's like, it happens. I think it shows the passion. What I really liked was seeing Matt Ritchie go over to him after the game and really just sit there and have a word with him and kind of just try and calm him down. And you can see it's a heat of the moment sort of decision. He's flown off because he's unhappy about it, because he wants to play. I'd much prefer people who, within reason, throw the toys out the pram because they're desperate to play for the club, than others who just are content to sit on the bench and pick up a paycheck.
Yeah, and
that's the end of the day.
Yeah, if you look at it from his point of view, he's a 21-year-old kid who's just made a big money move to a new club. He wants to impress his teammates, his coaches, the fans, and all that sort of stuff. And he wants to feel like he contributes, and he's contributed to the win. Now, there is a stigma and an embarrassment when the sub gets subbed. And I think he would have felt embarrassed by that, and he would have been a bit pissed off that he didn't get to finish the job. So he'd worked really hard to get the team from 1-0 down when he come on. He got us to a 2-1 win, and I think he wanted to see that job out, and the sub gets subbed, and like, I'd be pissed off too. Like, I'm not going to sit here and, like, if we were 4-1 up and that happened, I don't think he'd care. But because the game was still in the balance, I think you do. Like, it's human nature that you want to sort of be there when the job's finished. So I understand his frustrations and stuff. He went about it in the wrong way. But like I said, it's a 10-second conversation. Yeah, I'm a dickhead. Yeah, you're a dickhead. But you're our dickhead, so come here, mate, and give us a cup.
And it's a case of live and learn. It happens. Don't let it happen again. If it becomes a weekly issue, then maybe there's a problem there. But a one-off like temper tantrum because he was disappointed, I don't have a problem with. So let's move on with it. So the Mark Lawrence comments. So I know you don't know who he is. He's basically this ex-Liverpool player who worked for BBC. Has always been horrendously biased towards Liverpool, and has been sacked. He was sacked from BBC for effectively just being this shit pundit. And so he's now kind of going on to wherever he can get some airspace. And his latest comments were effectively saying that Newcastle are making the game boring for him. And I assume that he's making this comment based on our time wasting or whatever. But in reality, I think it's just purely and simply because he knows kind of like the signs are there now that Liverpool are not qualifying for the Champions League. They're going to miss out, which probably means they miss out on Bellingham, which probably means they miss out on some other players that they otherwise would have got. So he's throwing the toys out the pram. But I personally think it's hilarious that we're getting all this like anger towards us because people are finally starting to realize, well, hang on a bit, they are actually a bit of a threat and we're upsetting the apple cart. And for me, it's like, bring it on, us against the world mentality since it has been since Eddie Howe took over, basically. So do you see a problem with this in terms of the general media? Because this is it, isn't it? It's like it's the media that are generating all of this clickbait stuff, as you said, but it does get hard to kind of smile through it when it's just this constant bombardment of misinformed sort of comments from people who are probably irrelevant to the game, and they're just trying to sort of keep their name in the headlines a bit.
Yeah, but that's how it works. That's how the whole content stuff. You just make up some stupid random shit with no thought or research in it, and just say it. And once you say it, it's out there, and it'll get clipped up and tweeted and retweeted and comments, and then the bosses are sitting there rubbing their hands together because this is the best thing ever. Like the best thing you can do is like just don't even react to it, because the more you react to it, the more they're going to do it, because you're giving them what they want. Like,
Yeah,
I know it's hard, but sometimes you can.
It's hard not to react as fans.
Yeah, but you can
feel
slighted.
Still,
say if it was Twitter, and instead of sort of commenting and quote tweeting the post and shit like that, just write a post and say, old mate Lawrence is a dickhead. Like, don't read his shit. Don't listen to what he says. He's got no idea. Stop giving him oxygen, because you're just making him thrive. So, like I said, Newcastle fans need to just pick and choose. So that's what I've done. There's that much shit out there. You could spend years on Twitter and still not get through all the content of it. So pick and choose who you want to follow, and then your day's a lot better. You don't get sort of wound up in this stupid clickbait shit that makes you mad, and you write angry tweets and like just sort of I only follow the people who give me the news. Like, I don't care about bloody Laurie Lawrence's opinion. Like, I don't even know who he is. So I don't give a shit. I don't care about what Stan Collymore says about Newcastle. Who cares? Like, tell me if Miggy Almiron's back in training this week. I care about that. That's what I want to know. Like, Maxie's out for 4 games. Oh, that's what I want to know. Like, that's the shit I care about. I don't care if bloody Maxie's doing a Helios bloody orgy at someone's hotel in the city centre. I don't care about that.
I kind of do care about that if Maxie's off playing Helios and doing his sponsor trips rather than actually getting himself fit. But
I was going to go off on that.
That's a grey level. That's a kind of grey area for the player, I guess you would say. But yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It is definitely hard, and I am as guilty as everyone for jumping at these clickbait comments and having my 2 cents worth in response.
I throw some pippies out in the water, and they bloody get bites from everywhere.
And I'm all over that shit as soon as it happens. Yeah. Apologies. I'm contributing to it. I'm part of the problem, not part of the solution.
Yes.
So a couple of quick questions that I'm just going to fire at you now, just to kind of like close off the thing. So saw a couple of comments on Twitter today about, and I would say it was on Twitter, but it's fans talking amongst themselves about stuff as well. Anderson's game time and whether or not he should be loaned out next season, or do you see him getting a little bit more game time?
I think it's hard to judge now. I think it's something you have to revisit in maybe August, September kind of area, once we get a bit more clarity with what our squad looks like as a whole going into the season. And if things are to be believed, I think it would be best to go out for him maybe to a championship club on loan, just to really build his minutes up. I think there's definitely a player in there. We've seen enough glimpses through some cameos this year to suggest that there is going to be a player there. But
he looks comfortable. He looks comfortable playing in the Premier League. So
I think that's the biggest, not compliment, but I think that's the biggest tick you can give, that when he's played, he hasn't looked out of place at all.
No.
Like,
he just needs game time.
Yeah, like even that I just think back to that Forest half, because it was probably the most recent body of work we've seen in him. Like, he was great. He was everywhere that second half against Nottingham Forest when he come on. So I think I'm leaning towards probably going out on loan, because I think we will get bodies in and we will target that sort of front area of the ground. So top half championship club chasing promotion, or if you can get into a kind of relegation battling or a newly promoted Premier League side, which would you prefer? Given that it's Sholo and he'll probably cock it up anyway. So, but hypothetically speaking, he'll end up back at Bristol. No, I think top half champ, like selfishly, I want him in a top half championship team purely because well, he's not going to play against us if he's on loan, is he?
No.
Well,
To me,
I'd
if
probably
you
still
want him playing
championship.
Premier League, but
You do, but I don't think I think there's more of a guarantee for game time.
Yeah.
In a sort of top sort of promotion chasing championship side rather than a relegation battle side. Like as we know, they really chop and change their teams to try and find that sort of formula to get them out of the shit for a relegation team. So I think consistencies in playing time is probably more suggested for a top half championship team, or even
I get that completely. If you can get him someone who's kind of fighting for promotion, even for a playoff spot, they're going to be playing decent football. And as an attacking player, you want someone who's going to be able to get on the ball, not someone who's at a struggling Premier League club who are playing ultra defensive and he never sees the ball in his own half, in the attacking half. So yeah, totally get that. And you want to make sure he gets game time rather than someone who's like he's going to go somewhere and they're just going to put him on the bench because he's not a tried and tested. You know, we don't want another Garen Cole situation up at Hearts where he never gets any games. So one last thing is second last thing. Burn versus Target for left back. Do you think it's time for change? Do you think we'll see it anytime soon?
Short answer is no and no, because he doesn't change his back four, and I think I haven't checked the fixture for the rest of the year, but I'm pretty sure most of our games are week to week now. We don't have that. We might have one more little midweeker to catch up, mate. I think it might have been Brighton or something like that.
It's the Brighton game that's still got to be rescheduled, yeah.
But the rest of the week, the weeks are sort of week to week. So unless Burn gets injured, I think he's come too far now to lose his spot in the side to Target, and which is sort of sad because I thought Target was a really good player for us last year.
I thought he played really well when he was on loan. I was glad that he got signed up. I thought he provides. It's a weird situation where he's probably not as defensively organised as Dan Burn, and I think Dan Burn gives flexibility when Trippier bombs forward to kind of slot into like a back three.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's where we're benefiting from him. But Target's definitely much better on the overlap, which I think we kind of missed a little bit with Maxi to a certain extent. But Burn is getting forward a bit more now, which is good to see. The last thing for the night, Bruno's form of late. I don't think, me personally, I don't think he's getting anywhere near the credit that he probably deserves, because he's not having these kind of like outstanding matches that we kind of got used to last season. But he's still pulling the strings. He's still doing all the right things. He's still picking out crucial passes. How good do you think Bruno is and has been in this recent run of form, and how crucial is he still to that midfield?
Oh, he's the heartbeat of this side. Like, it's no coincidence that when he come back from that red card, that like our forms spiked dramatically. And I think it's twofold. I think he doesn't get the credit he deserves. One, because Isak's doing Isak things. A £63 million, Alexander Isak is sort of stealing his headlines a bit, and we have been scoring and things like that. So a lot of the focus has been more to our attacking players. And I reckon there's a bit of I'm not sure. I don't even know what a word is, but we've sort of, the shine or the surprise has gone off Bruno now.
Getting used to it now because it's just expected.
Yeah. So we're like, it's not like, so when he first started, I didn't know if this guy was like a gun or he's just a pretty good player, and we've just had so much shit that he looks so much better than what we've got. And then the longer it went on, I'm like, oh, no, he's a star. Like, that's what it is. And I think now, we've just become, well, that's him now. What he does the same shit every game. He's done the same stuff as what he does the first time he played for us. But now we've gone, that's him. And that's just what we expect out of him now.
Yeah. It's been a while since he's scored a goal, and I think everyone's been really focused on getting that defensive holding midfielder in the summer so that we can push him forward more. Do Do you think you miss out on his, and I hesitate to use the term because it makes me cringe, but that quarterback role where he's pinging balls around from a deeper position, that would probably lose if he was playing further up the pitch?
Yeah, well, it's hard. Like, it's hard on the TV, isn't it? Because you can't see the full sort of game unfold. So I've said it. I think I said it a few weeks ago as well when we had Adam Peacock on, and he was there. And he effectively plays the three positions. He's a sort of holding midfielder who gets the ball off the back four or the back two, whoever's got it, and can look up and make a pass. He's a centre midfielder as well in the same where he can sort of link up everyone. And then sometimes he gets forward and plays as that number 10. So, yeah, that's how valuable he is. He covers three positions. And when he doesn't play, we don't have anyone else that can play probably two positions. In that sort of center of the park. So that underlines his importance to us. But I think, everyone's kind of used to his level now, and that's just what's expected.
Oh, there's definitely that element of the spotlight being elsewhere. I totally agree with you on that. Isak's just on fire, and 63 million pound Isak is been on fire.
So you're learning now. I don't have
to. It's going to take some time to get used to that. But yeah,
I might get Isak 63 on my top next year. He's still going to pay for the two characters. I might as well pick which two characters I want to use.
But he's like just that different class of player up front, and he offers so much more than what we've had with Wilson, I think. I mean, and I love Callum Wilson, and I think he's still got a lot to offer given how he's had that upturn in form. But the way Isak's been playing, I mean, it's not surprising that Bruno's kind of not the be all and end all at the moment, because Isak's just taking all the spotlight off everyone at the moment with how
Willock's had a good run of games as well. He scored a couple of goals, so he's been getting his flowers. Joel Linton's scored. So there is the other people who are. I think it's more the people who score. They seem to be the ones who get all the
and it's especially at Newcastle,
all the headlines.
The history behind the number 9 and everything. That's always going to be. It's always going to be the newsworthy player to watch. I mean, it was interesting today where there's a lot of kind of praise, rightly so, being thrown at Erling Haaland and how good he is, and the goal tally he's already got, and what they're expecting him to do, and that he's going to be out on his own, and he's the new Messi in terms of world football and all this sort of stuff. Isak's like not far behind him in terms of minutes per goal, and he's been injured most of the season. So it's scary to think what he could have been doing had he not had that major injury and he'd been playing for all this time. But how much do you think that? So to me, my opinion is definitely Erling Haaland is definitely the better finisher. I think he is just insane at scoring goals. But I think Isak is not bad, to say the least. But he's also probably a more all-round player. He's got better ball control skills and better sort of like off the ball running and pressuring and things like that. And that's potentially Howe's style of play. But how much do you think Isak's going to push on? And it's going to be those two players to really, if he continues on the way he's doing it with our big dog up front, how good do you think it's going to be seeing those two sort of battling it out each season for the goal scoring plaudits?
Yeah, it's great. I think, we've probably got two of the most obsessed managers coaching them both. Guardiola and Howe are probably the two most obsessed managers in the Premier League, just with their attention to every little detail of positioning and body and where you need to be, and your technique and everything like that. They drill it down to the nth degree, and they'll squeeze every bit of lemon juice that they've got out of their players. So I hope that he stays. Well, obviously, I want Isak to stay, but I hope Haaland does stay in the Premier League and he doesn't piss off to Real Madrid or somewhere like that. But because he can dominate, or him and Isak could dominate and be it'd be like a Henry and sort of, who was that, Van Nistelrooy, and Shearer was sort of at the back end of his career when all that shit was happening. Drogba was
just starting
punching him in Chelsea, as well. There was a bit of a golden age of strikers in the Premier League, and I reckon we're not far off sort of getting the new generation to come through as well.
No, for sure. It'd be nice to get there. And then obviously, I mean, as much as we maybe don't like his antics, Ivan Toney as well is probably in amongst there with how good he's been for Brentford as well. So yeah. Right then, that half an hour podcast is now dragged on to almost an hour as usual when we start waffling on about football. Standard stuff. So let's wrap it up there with a prediction. What's your prediction for the game?
Yeah, well, I did have something in my head, and then when you mentioned about the the lack of goals and success in the organised meetups, I did sway a little bit, but I'll stay where my heart is. I'm going to go a 1-1 draw. All my draws have been wins in the last few weeks, so I'll keep the ball rolling. So
it has to be default for you now because we win every time you say that.
Yeah, I don't want to flirt. Don't want to flirt with my form or the team's form. So I'll stick with a 1-1 draw.
I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. I think it will be tight. I think I listened to an Aston Villa podcast today, and they were quite adamant that it's probably going to come down to our defense against their attack. They don't create very many chances. We don't concede very many chances. So I think if Aston Villa don't take the chances that they do get, I think that could be slim pickings for them. And I think we've kind of always got a goal in us at the moment, or a couple of goals in us at the moment, the way we're playing. That XG is starting to filter through into actual goals. So it's always good to see. So yeah, we'll leave it there. So yeah, 2-1 for me, 1-1 from you, and hopefully that's another wrong guess, and it's another win for the boys, and we can celebrate a couple of goals and a win at the Pig and Whistle on Saturday night. Sorry. So yeah.
Hopefully for everyone, that you have something to cheer and sing about.
Indeed. Awesome. Thanks very much for that. And we'll be doing I don't know who's actually booked in for the review pod, but we will have that out on probably Sunday. So keep an eye out for that, everyone. Thanks very much, Keegan. Enjoy the rest of your week.
You too, my friend.
Cheers, mate.